Welcome to the fifth session of the first tutorial in our research methods tutorial series. In this tutorial, we are going to look at the various approaches to qualitative research. So without wasting much time, let's look at them one after the other. So the first one we are going to look at is narrative research. Now, narrative research is about stories. It is about collecting and analyzing personal accounts or stories and experiences of people to understand how people make sense of their experiences or how they see the world. So it's like listening to someone's life story and finding meaning in it. That's all. So that's how narrative research works. You just want to understand their personal experiences or their stories. Okay. So some examples are, let's say, a study on how those who survived war, how they narrate their trauma and recovery. You just want to understand how they survived the war and how they were able to deal with trauma and how they recover. You get it? So that is narrative research. You get it? You don't worry, I'm just putting it like this for now, just for you to understand. But later, I'll show you how to write research objective when we are dealing with research objective and research questions. I'll show you how to write research objective for a narrative research and how to write or how to frame a research question, okay, for a narrative research. But for now, I'm putting it in this manner for you to get what it is about, okay. Then another example is when you explore the career journeys and challenges of successful self-made entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs are people who are new into business. So how they were able to succeed. Okay, you want to understand their experience. So they narrate their experience to you. You get it? So you are conducting narrative research. Another example is experiences of students with online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. So those who studied online during the COVID, you want to understand their experience with it. Okay. Then let's look at the second one, which is phenomenological research. Phenomenological, so it's about an occurrence. Okay, you want to understand how people feel. You want to understand how they feel about a particular occurrence, about a particular situation, about a particular condition, okay, or event. You want to understand how they feel. You want to understand their experience and how they feel about it. So you are trying to get to the heart of their personal stories and feelings, emotions and perceptions. So that's how phenomenological research works. It kind of looks like narrative research. But narrative, you just explore their experience or stories. But phenomenological, you want to understand how they feel about that experience. Let's take some examples. Now, let's say understanding how employees feel about being laid off. So some employees were laid off. Okay, that's an occurrence. And you want to understand how they feel about that occurrence. So you are going to conduct a phenomenological research. Okay, don't worry. When we are doing research objectives and research questions, I'll show you how to write research objectives and research questions for phenomenological research. Is that okay? Another example is exploring the lived experiences of students who have been bullied, focusing on their emotion, academic and social impact. So you want to understand how they feel about being bullied. You get it? Their experience with bullying and how they feel about it. So the occurrence is bullying, but you want to understand their feeling, their experience about that bullying. Is that clear? So let's look at the next one, which is ethnographical research. Now look at the word ethno. So like ethnic. So it's about culture, way of life. Okay. So for ethnographical research, the researcher will put himself in that community or in an organization or in a social group so that he can watch and observe and understand how people do things, understand their culture, how they behave, how they live, how they work, how they interact, and many more. So this is about understanding their culture, their way of life. So the period, observing people in their natural settings. So a researcher in social science can live among indigenous tribes to understand their traditions and beliefs. So that's ethnographical research. Another example is when a researcher hangs out in a company to see how employees really interact and what their workplace culture is like, how they do things at their workplace. Then another example is observing how nurses communicate with doctors in emergency rooms. So you want to understand how they communicate, their culture, their communication style, how they communicate among themselves in emergency rooms. Okay, so let's look at the next one, which is case study research. Now, for case study research, it's about a particular case. Okay, you want to gain detailed insight into one specific situation, just a case. Okay, so you use it to gain detailed insight on a single entity. Is that okay? When I say entity, it could be a person, it could be an organization, it could be an event, it could be a group. So it is like to zoom in on a single story or case. It helps the researcher to understand all details and complex issues in real-world context. Let's take some examples. Analyzing how one particular startup became a huge success. So it's a case you want to study. How one particular organization became a huge success. So you want to get detail. Another example is studying a hospital that successfully reduced patient waiting time. So you want to gain a detailed insight into it. Okay. Another example is examining a school that implemented a new digital learning program. So that's a case you want to gain detailed insights into. So let's look at the next one, which is grounded theory research. For grounded theory research, this is about building a theory based on data. So you build a theory based on the data. So it does not test existing theories. You collect data and let the patterns and ideas emerge naturally. So it is all about discovering new insights and creating theories based on what people tell you. So you are going to create the theory based on the data you've gathered, based on what people tell you. Is that okay? So let's take some examples. For instance, maybe a researcher in social science developed a theory on how social media can influence activism by analyzing people's stories. He will analyze people's stories. Okay, then from their stories, he's going to develop a theory on how social media can influence activism. Okay, another example is creating a model. Okay, we deal with models in economics and business. We'll be saying models. So when you create a model on how small businesses survive during tough economic times, so that is grounded theory research. Is that okay? So the methods we use in collecting data for the various qualitative research approaches include interviews. Interview is like talking to people one-on-one. You see that, to understand their experiences. Then focus group discussion. You are going to have many people having discussion so that you can see different perspectives. Another method is observation. So you watch, you observe. Another method is document analysis. For this one, you are going to examine written materials like letters or reports. You can also examine a particular video. It's a document. Is that okay? So generally, qualitative research gives you detailed insights. But some problems with qualitative research is that the findings may happen to be subjective and biased. Another problem with it is that you can't easily generalize your findings. And in fact, data collection will consume a lot of your time. And another thing about it is that it is difficult to replicate the study. You get it? Let's take some break for now and look at the quantitative ones in the next session. The link to the next session has been displayed on the screen of this video or in the description area below. Thank you and see you in the next session.